Welcome to Module 2. In the last module, we began by assessing the idea of a new cosmology and a paradigm shift taking place in the world. In this module, we turn now to how human beings have conceptualized the idea of divinity as generous. Human beings have attributed generosity through at least two lenses to the divine over the course of history. First, we've attributed generosity through a polytheistic pantheon of gods or forces that impact human life, as the Greeks or Egyptians or Mayans have exhibited in their respective theologies. Generosity in these cases doesn't mean that the gods aren't amoral or immoral or even narcissistic at times. I'm simply highlighting that generosity, or a generous disposition attributed to the divine, is what myths and sacred scripture and even popular contemporary testimonials that you find on bookshelves attribute to the divine this generous disposition. Or second, we have conceptualized divinity within the monotheistic God, as in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and more. That is to say, in the monotheistic God, we've attributed generosity. And so today I will begin by addressing the cross-cultural and cross-religious quality of generosity attributed to the gods or to God. And in encountering a new cosmology together, we can ask ourselves, how do we understand this generosity and this generous deity in light of new scientific discovery? So this brief lecture will help frame the readings through the lens of divine generosity in the cosmos. Now, before my work on generosity, let me give you a few tips on the readings for this module related to the sense of generosity. This question of God at work in the universe is what brings us today to the Vinci and Hout readings for this module. First, in Vinci's reading. And this week she will introduce us to a rich array of relevant theologians and philosophers who all attempted to iterate a relational view of a generous God as a creative and creating spirit. And Vinci aligns this image of a generous God as a creator spirit to an assessment of the spark and formation of the cosmos attributed popularly to our understanding of the Big Bang. So Vinci's going to talk about the creator spirit and the Big Bang. Now, next, in our second reading for today, Hout takes a step back from God, and he instead reimagines generosity first through the concept of mystery that informs any further discussion of God itself. Hout reminds me that theologians for centuries have reflected on how sacred texts across religions have introduced humanity to the idea in the Latin of what we call the mysterium tremendum. That is to say, the tremendous mystery. What is the tremendous mystery? It is the infinite quest or question of being, or of the essence of being itself, of the essence of life, stripped of all of the minutiae. What are we really here for? And who and what is God? Human language has difficulty describing, in language, this tremendous mystery, even as we've never stopped trying to identify it. Now, that fact alone is a fascinating aspect of our humanity, wouldn't you agree? We've never stopped trying to articulate the mystery we cannot fully comprehend. Mystery courses through our veins. This is Hout's point, and he'll discuss God as a name we give, infinite mystery. But in short, Vinci will begin with the idea of God as a creator spirit and a force in today's readings, and Hout will take a step back to think of first the generous mystery and how we name this mystery God. Okay, let's discuss the idea of generosity and the gods, which will frame the module and the readings and get you to the stellar observation itself as well. For the past 10,000 years, humans have been mindful of mystery in our midst. The Latin religio means to bind together. Thus, religion has a way of binding together our interpretations of mystery in the cosmos. And when we encounter mystery as human beings, we often identify God or the gods and thereafter begin a dialogue with that mystery. Now, this encounter with mystery has taken place across religions and across cultures in what we might call an existential dance between divine generosity that initiates the creation of the cosmos and the human response of gratitude, with moral conduct that is meant to be generous even as the gods are generous. Now, this quality of generosity is cross-religiously and cross-culturally conceived to be a foundational quality of God in the cosmos. From the great vows of Jainism, which indicate ahimsa or nonviolence toward all beings, to the Abrahamic understanding of a loving God who loves or shows mercy to humanity, well, that God is the primum movens, or that is to say from the Latin, the first mover. God isn't a cosmic Santa Claus. No, just imparting gifts as God deems them freely to give to humanity. It is the mystics instead, across religious and cultural traditions, as rich as Zoroastrianism is to Christian Eastern Orthodox understandings of kenosis. Kenosis, this understanding, is that only in surrendering the cacophonic or noisy sound of our expectations for reward in this life will we in fact hear mystery speak in the silent limits of Haut calls it, of human life. Now, amidst divine generosity, human beings are framed by experience and questions that take place within the limits of our own humanity. We are limited. We are born. We live and we die. In short, we are finite. And yet within our limits and our finitude, we exhibit grand aspirations that appear to nearly transcend our limitations. We are radically free to discern a future on the one hand, and on the other hand, we are also greatly limited by powers, influences, health issues, questions, and other forces that are out of our control entirely. The mystery of the universe attributed as a generous or to a generous God often retains the further qualities of being merciful, steadfast, and loving, particularly in the monotheistic strain. We can think of divine generosity elicited, for instance, in the Hebrew term hesed, insofar as by hesed we mean generosity as an adoring, loving kindness that originates first in God's character as a God who desires to be in relationship with creation. So this is about generosity and divinity and relationship. To take this point of relationship further, the opening surah of the Quran asserts that the generous deity is the quote-unquote most merciful and compassionate from which the world itself is derived. Now, Protestant Christians also use a phraseology of God's overflowing grace, given as a gift for the world through Jesus Christ. Particular religious interpretations of divine mystery, of generosity abound. In shorthand, we can say that divine generosity is a loving kindness that originates in and models after God's character first. Now pay attention to one further point. When you have cross-cultural and cross-religious similarities like this, it means that these similar ideas that are framed in sacred text have an origination point that predates written scripture long before it lived in oral tradition. Now, this is not a surprise. It's not rocket science, perhaps to any of us. It's just important to remember that human beings didn't one bright January morning in 1321 think up generosity. Yeah, attributed to mystery. My professional sense of this is that the encounter of cosmology through the lens of a self-giving mystery is one of the oldest and most intact relational concepts within our very humanity. In the cosmos, God acts. Think of Hebrew scriptures, Genesis 1, or in the Quran, Surah 14. God acts. And this initial divine act of creation is first and foremost a supreme act of generosity to human beings and to the world. So this means that generosity attributed to the divine has immediate cosmological consequences. I want you to be aware of that in the readings for this module. It's not that the idea is external to God, as though God is external to cosmology. It's that it's interwoven with it, so that creation itself, as the divine calling into order of things out of nothing, is the primum movens, or in the Latin again, to say the first act of the self-giving God in creation itself. I use the Latin because it helps us understand the English is a little more impoverished or diminished from the original Latin term. Primum movens is to say that God is the prime mover, the first mover in the order of creation. And generosity is in fact related intricately to that movement. Now, when you read both Vinci and Hout today, remember that Vinci's assessment of God as a creator spirit, or Hout's interpretation of mystery as an inexhaustible presence in the cosmos. All in all, the act of bringing the cosmos into being is always a holy act. Now, what makes this act of creation and generosity holy? Well, for Jews, Christians, and Muslims, among others, creation is a story of God who enters into history itself, and in so doing consecrates the world and all of the cosmos through creation. This is the idea of a transcendent deity who enters into time and space, enters into human history, ultimately, itself. And this act consecrates creation and makes it holy. The act of creation is holy because the whole cosmos is found to be sacred through creation itself. And within that divine tapestry of the cosmos, God also creates consciousness. In the Genesis account, a higher form of consciousness, we might say, although that's debatable, humanity, is created on the same day as the donkey. This gives us a sense of things to come, if you see what I mean. Hadame, or Adam, Hadame, literally means the breath of God, burst into the cosmos from the same dust as the stars. Now, religions, religio, to bind, around the world are bound up in the enterprise of expressing divine generosity. When you turn to the stellar observation, the Samsara video that you'll see there, that I'm asking you to watch as you respond to these questions, that video exemplifies the effort, I believe, to understand the mystery of generosity cross-religiously, cross-culturally, through image, sound, art, and nature. For instance, monks patiently create a mandala. Baroque frescoes escape their limited frames, dancing on the ceilings. Baptism introduces a new relationship to the divine. Prayer and meditation rise up from one individual or from millions. The human face, the arcs of St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome, the Tibetan prayers offered at midday, these are all the work that originate in an interpretation of mystery as generous in the cosmos. When near the end of the video, all of the colors of the mandala are swept up, this is to remind us of our limitation, as Hout discusses in the text, in the face of mystery itself. Even within our limitations, religion reveals that generosity and mystery are lurking behind every aspect of our limited lives. Religion reveals that we have a demonstrated need to be close to that first generosity in the cosmos. In fact, through philosophies and religions in the world, as human beings, we've developed what could be called a spiritual circulatory system on the planet. And this is why I wanted you to view the Samsara video. It should reveal to you something of the spiritual circulatory system that has cosmological implications. I want us to do this, to stretch our understanding of both mystery and the gods. In the spirit of generosity, view the lecture, engage the readings, return to stellar observation, all in that order for Module 2. And if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to me.